Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now today I'm going to be doing another retro review, which I really enjoy doing these. I must admit I do enjoy doing these, but I don't get much opportunity because appropriate things don't come in very often. So it's just a case of grabbing the chance while I can, really. In the 80s, stroke 90s, well, stroke 70s actually, that sort of period was like the sort of peak of sort of audio. You know, everybody had a hi-fi system, and there was loads of little companies, usually one guy and a couple of engineers in a little unit somewhere, and they'd all be complete enthusiasts into the music, into the hi-fi, and quite often they'd produce ranges of amplifiers or a single product or whatever, and there were loads of them. Just off the top of my head, there was D&M, there was Quantum, there was Crimson Electric. There was various others, NVA. Yeah, look, all these little companies doing really good products. And amongst all those, if you go back to the 70s, there was a company called Nitec, which were a little bit more successful than most, and they did do really well. The only drawback with the Nitec was that the reliability wasn't good. They were actually quite sort of flaky design, really. But people sort of forgave them because they were superb. They were really good amps. At the time, there was Name Audio, which was sort of the big brand, big marketing, big everything else, and they dominated the market. And things like the Nitec were sort of a good budget alternative that were probably easily as good as the bottom end. So, yeah, great products, but there was a good chance it would go wrong on you. Saying that, there are still some around, and when I did a review of the Nitec, and I also mentioned Nitec in my Unreliable Amplifiers video, and I had quite a few people saying, well, I bought one in 1978 and it's been fine, which I think is always the case. You always get that, but when you look at percentages of failures and things, they were amongst the most reliable things I've ever sold, I think, or dealt with. Now, Nitec was Richard Hay, and I think after a while, probably the unreliability and the issues with production, whatever, they actually did go out of business. But from the ashes, Richard Hay brought out, now this is me, maybe wrong on this, I think it's still Richard Hay, brought a new brand called Ion. And Ion, from what I remember, was, I think the first generation Ion amplifiers were based very roughly on Nitec, but then later on they became sort of their own designs, really. But they were absolutely superb. The whole range was superb, and it was a little bit like the Nitec range where there was lots of different options. There was preamps, power amps, integrated amplifiers. Nitec did a receiver, they did an electronic crossover, and there was a collaboration with Arc loudspeakers where there was a full active system with Nitec amplification and crossover and active Arc speakers, which was amazing. I had a guy recently who was still using one. So Ion, I think, from what I remember, they had integrated amplifiers. You could add power supplies to them, a little bit like Name. I think they did pre's and powers, but I'm a little bit sketchy on that as to what models were. Later on, I think there was a bit of a collaboration with a chap from Hungary. And later generations, I think that this is an Obelisk 3. There was 1, 2 and 3, and then later on we had 100, 200, 300, and I think they were a collaboration with the chap from Hungary. Then Ion disappeared, and nowadays there's a brand called Heed, which you've probably seen around. They do some great products. They do a little power supply for record players, they do integrated amplifiers, headphone amplifiers, pre-power amplifiers. Everything is superb, and that is a chap from Hungary, and I think there's a little bit of the ethos of Ion still there. I think there is a sort of a link from Nitec, through Ion, right through into Heed. Like I say, it's still going. I think the Obelisk, which we've got in front of us here, I think basically the Obelisk was a very similar amplifier to the original Name. It had a very similar sound to it, very clean and clear and pacey sounding amp that drove things it probably shouldn't do. I didn't have much involvement because I think at the time Ion were sort of a thing. I worked at a place up in Liverpool, and one of our big competitors, who wasn't too far away, really majored in it. He did loads and loads. It was Chris Brooks, if people remember Chris. He's still out there, still doing it. Chris Brooks was really big on Ion, and really there was not a lot of point in us sort of treading on his toes, so he sort of tended to pull back a little bit from it. But what a superb range this was. Really, really good. Very simple design. And what I'll do, I'll move the camera and let you have a closer look at it. Well, sadly, this one's died. Might look into getting it fixed, but I think it's got an awful lot going on with it, really. I think the caps and definitely output transistor gone. Various other things that seem a bit shaky with it, so I don't know. I think it's kind of died its last death, to be honest, but sadly. But anyway, I'll move the camera and let's have a look at the front panel. Yeah, so there you go. I mean, like I say, it's very simple design, very very straightforward switch gear, and we've got a headphone socket, volume control, 3-4 inputs. Very similar in, like I say, in a lot of ways to like the name Nate, the original name Nate 1. It's a little bit more sort of professional in a lot of ways than some of the other brands that were out there. Things like Quantum and Crimson Electric were very much, they almost looked like they'd raided the RS catalogue parts bin for controls and switch gear and everything. These look a little bit more bespoke, to be honest. Whether they are or not, I don't know, but it gives that impression of being a little bit more of a bespoke design. We've got the badging there by Ion Systems, stereo integrated amplifier, Obelisk 3. Power button, slightly strange switching on this, where tape button you should expect to stay in like that, but tuner, you can sort of, now whether or not, I can't remember, now whether or not pressing in the tuner on the CD at the same time, whether you manage to get tuner and CD playing through the speakers at the same time. In theory you would, because they're not deselecting each other. I don't think that's the fault, I think that's how it was, to be honest, but it's a bit of an oddity. But anyway, nice chunky volume control. Yeah, decent bit of aluminium at the front, sort of sculpted out for all the switches. So it's quite a pretty looking thing. These can go for quite a bit of money. So people who remember them were prepared to pay good money for these now, but unfortunately, like I say, this one's a bit in the dust, big style. So hence me not switching it on to show you the LED, because it's gone very unstable. Let's have a look at the back panel anyway. Yeah, actually, considering there's so little on the front, there's quite a lot going on the back panel with these. Phono input, which is gold-plated socketry on there. I think there's a little card here which looks like it's an optional from purchase, I would imagine, because we've got, if you can just about make out there, we've got a little block there with MC, and CD on it, and MC and CD are blacked out with felt tip, just to leave the MM. So that means this has got an MM card in it. So obviously there's MC and a CD, a line level option on it. And then we've got CD, tuner, tape. Then we've got, so it's 3 inputs plus the phono. We've also got a preamp out, because obviously there were power amps. Saying that, I don't remember there being an Ion power amps, but I think there must have been, because like I say, it sort of followed on from Nitec really. It's got a preamp out and power amp in, which is an unusual one, but that's quite interesting. It means you could actually buy them. If you have 2 of these, you could actually link them together. And the speaker outputs, it looks a bit odd. This is something you used to get quite regularly on amps around this sort of time. Creek used to do it. Saying I can't think of any others now, but I know certainly Creek 4040s had this on the back panel. You've got 2 positives on here. You've got direct and switched. Normally, if you were normal situation, you just use positive, negative, so those 2. If you were intending to use headphones at any point, you would actually use the other 2. You'd use the switched, because what that does is, if you're connected here and you plug the headphones in, you can hear the headphones and the speakers. If you connect it to the switched, it will actually switch out the speakers when the headphones are connected in. And it was quite a common thing to have then, really. Partly to keep it purist, it means that you've got an option to have everything connected up and the headphone switching not to be in circuit, which is of a benefit. But if you really do want to use headphones, then you can then compromise it a little by switching it the other way. Like I say, don't see that nowadays, but it was actually quite a decent feature, that. It was quite a good way of doing it. And again, standard IEC on the back there. So yeah, made in mid-Wales, it says along the bottom. There's not many brands that were made in Wales, to be honest. Although saying that, there was Deltec was Wales, I suppose. Roxanne was the big one. I suppose the obvious one is Roxanne, was right in the middle of Wales. Is it Bullith Wells? Can't remember now. Yeah, Deltec was in Cardiff, I think. But yeah, there's not that many that I can think of brands from Wales particularly. But yeah, so yeah, I'll just turn the camera around and yeah, so that's the Iron Obelisk 3, which, like I say, it's quite a cult following for these things. All those brands of that sort of era have got, people in the know will really search them out. Like I say, like Ions, Crimson Electric and all that sort of thing, D&M, Deltec, all these sort of brands, Quantum, which I seem to be the only person who remembers Quantum, but yeah, they did some good pre-powers, but they did look very, that sort of made in a garage sort of feel to them. But really good, yeah, so really, really good. So yeah, and actually, if anybody's got a Crimson 510, 520 pre-power that they wouldn't mind letting me borrow for a bit, I'd love to do a review on one of those, if there's any out there. And apparently, well, they're only made up the road, they were made in Stoke-on-Trent, so there must be some round here. Stoke-on-Trent's only 10 miles away. So yeah, anyway, I'll end it there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all the amazing comments I get in email or sort of suggestions for favourite albums and things like that. That's been really good. Thanks for the people who've sent me music through. I've had CDs through the post for people, which there's some good discoveries actually. Yeah, pleased about that one as well. So yeah, thanks for thanks for everything really. I'm quite overwhelmed with the reactions I'm getting from people. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe and give us a like, and I'll see you in a future video. Thank you very much.